everybody. So still going through Idaho, ran out of water, and I thought our idea for refilling water on the go was too clever not to share. So basically I've got this little backpacking bladder in here and I'm pushing my arm against it and pinching it open so it'll fill our water bottle for the road trip. Anywho, so ideas out there for anybody else who might be taking a long haul road trip that does not want to stop and pay for water constantly. Free hotel water!
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me all the way from Portland, Maine, we have the coolest member of the clergy you will ever find. It's the Reverend Tracy. How you doing?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If I'm the coolest member of the clergy, I'm pretty sure there's some people who would be willing to take you to court on that one. But, it's been another wonderful adjustment period. My partner just got back from a work trip that got cut short due to somebody testing positive for the VIDI. So we are technically self-quarantining right now. He got to self-plunge his nose at a Walgreens drive-through, which was horrible to even sit next to. I super hope I don't have to do it, basically. But yeah, we'll get those results back, and we're just being good kids until we know, like, yes or no. I don't think it's super likely. You know what I mean? It's not like they were like sharing drinks or going up to the coffee machine and cuddling. So I'm hoping it's a big fat nothing.
Well, and if it is, I mean, you and the Mr. Reverend both have your vaccines anyway. So at worst, you just get really sick. You're not going to have the extreme side effects that the unvaccinated people are dealing with.
The jury's still out if it's Delta variant, though. And that one, unfortunately, is what is kind of starting to permeate. And they didn't say which one it was. So we're just kind of, gonna do our best and chill with life like we do. How has your week been going?
It has been good. I think the big thing, especially for the show, is we got a new logo.
Yay! Yes, talk about that.
Yeah, I loved our previous logo with the font and everything, but I think, after hearing some people critique logos of podcasts, I think one common critique that I heard was that some logos don't give you personality. And what I wanted to do was kind of have a logo that does kind of elicit some of that personality. Now, with our massive budget that we have here to run this show, we did have to go through the good folks at Bitmoji in order to help with that process. So, if you're on your podcast player of choice, when you're looking at the logo, you're going to see the characters, the caricatures of myself, the Reverend Tracy, and Professor Aubrey that we have up there are from Bitmoji. The plan is somewhere down the road, when the R&D budget on the show goes up just a little bit, then we can maybe talk to an artist friend or an artist that has a reasonable choice and get some caricatures that that we can own long term, if the show does get bigger. But I do like it. I mean, it's like any. Yeah, I mean, like anything with this show, like this is essentially a talk show. So the format can and should change over time, and I think that goes for the logo as well. But overall, I'm really digging the logo.
Yeah, I am too. And I've really enjoyed using Bitmoji. I use it in talking to my stepkids because, it's kind of nice to turn yourself into a cartoon when you're trying to establish a bond with a child. It kind of like works in that little bit of a favor. But I've also just really liked using it even with friend updates on my Facebook. And I know I've even responded in the Facebook group and in Discord using Bitmoji. So fun fact, if you're a Bitmoji user, and we're not like by any means sponsored by them, we just kind of, like them and appreciate use of it, unless they send us a cease and desist, and then we will have a different conversation. But if you do like it, by the way, you can get Gboard downloaded as an app if you have Android. and you can actually use it in there. So I can be in my texting and hit one of the little options. It'll bring up my Bitmoji, and then I can even search for the type of Bitmoji that I'm looking for. So it's a neat one to use. I enjoy it a lot. So
yeah, it's same with iOS as well. You do have options on the Apple devices to have it installed too. So I've definitely been enjoying it. The professor's been enjoying it as well, and we've done the same thing of sending them back and forth to each other in text messages instead of actually talking.
yeah, it's a nice way because, text is just such a format that is known for miscommunication. So when you can give a little bit more character to what you're trying to say, it works. But I mean, I guess to say until we get a cease and desist from Bitmoji, or if we get the budget to offer to pay. And then, of course, if we do have any creative artist friends out there that just wouldn't mind that relationship of having like their name on it and getting a shout out from the show and getting maybe some attention to your artwork, feel free to hit us up. But yeah, otherwise we'll probably, I'd imagine we'd post amongst our folks, like when we get to the point of being able to offer money for it.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I mean, just when it comes to the offer, like you just mentioned about someone, essentially gifting us the thing. Don't think of it as a gift. Like the deal I have with the guy who did our theme song, for instance, is I give him promotion for now because obviously we're not making money. When the time comes that we do make money, guess who's getting a phone call and guess who's getting some money thrown his way? That's Christopher Lazarick, the guy who does the theme song. So the same thing would be in place for the person who did the logo. Of course, that goes without saying. So yeah, if there is someone that would be kind enough to do that, it'll be a scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of deal. We'll promote your work. We'll go out of our way to let the world know what kindness you've given this wonderful show.
Exactly. In spite of what happens, and some things we're actually going to talk about later, artists, especially on the small scale and not in the giant public arena, tend to very much scratch each other's backs. Looking in the haunt community, there's a lot of stuff I do for free. But as, Fearlandia gets bigger and better, and as it gets more successful, I also know that those dudes will totally set me up. Like, they're not going to not appreciate the work that I put in, like, off calendar. So like everything I do right now remotely that I'm working on is not technically being, paid for, but, I know they'll hit me back later.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the arts in general. A lot of it is just networking. And how do you network? By helping your friends out, and imagine that.
Imagine, people can just do nice shit for each other and it's nice in the end. But, like I said, I know we've got some stuff on the chopping block for the show today. So.
Yeah, so let's dive into it. First of all, this week, we had a new movie debut, both in theaters and on HBO Max, The Suicide Squad. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I heard of The Suicide Squad. I have not seen it, though.
Definitely recommend seeing it. I think it would be up your alley. It's very dark in a lot of ways, but the writer and director, James Gunn, who you probably know more from anything than from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, he's behind this as well, but he is channeling his trauma entertainment past because he used to work with Trauma Entertainment. Actually wrote the movie Tromeo and Juliet for them that was narrated by Lemmy from Motorhead, so that makes it an instant classic. And Trauma is notorious for just being violent, bloody, guts everywhere, and that's what this movie had. This movie had some bizarre characters. Like, I never thought I would see the day when Polka Dot Man made it onto the big screen. Polka Dot Man.
I don't think I've heard of Polka Dot Man, which is strange because I did really go through a phase where I loved polka dots for a while.
Yeah, he was a character that was big in the Silver Age of comics in the 50s, when in the height of the comic code authority, the self-regulating group that ran comic books. That's when he was around, and he wasn't popular. Even in the 50s, people thought they were goofy, but what they did for the movie that was brilliant. They had the Polka Dot Man. His mother was a scientist scientist and like infected her kids with a strange like intergalactic sickness. And like twice a day, he has to expel these polka dots from his body, but these polka dots kill anything that it touches.
Okay, then. And this is a bad guy, right? Because wasn't Suicide Squad kind of the antagonist being the protagonist flip?
Yes, the whole premise behind Suicide Squad is that the leader of the group, Task Force X, I think they call it, Amanda Waller, takes these hardened criminals, these just dirt bags, the absolute worst of the worst, and implants a bomb in their head and says that if you go on this mission and are successful in that mission, you will get some time off your sentence. But if you accept this and you go out on that mission and you try and desert, we're going to blow you up. So it's a way to get it was a government type of thing they implied. It is essentially you have them do the dirty work of the government, and then if they get caught or killed or whatever, you can deny it, type of deal. But it's also another great character in the movie, King Shark. A shark that has legs and arms and walks on the ground. King Shark was voiced by Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, how funny. Why does this sound familiar? Like, I think that's not the first time I've heard Sylvester Stallone doing the shark person.
I mean, the ads have been pretty prevalent. Like this is the first time King Shark has been in a live action thing, but the King Shark character has shown up in the cartoons before plenty of times, and of course in the comics. But just overall, it was crazy. It was loony. It was funny, but the audiences didn't really care for it, unfortunately. When I saw it in theaters, I didn't expect a totally packed house by any means because of the world we live in today, but not many people were there. Speculation is that the HBO Max thing kind of cannibalized some of that audience, because if you already have an HBO Max subscription, you don't have to pay extra for this like you would with Disney with their Premier Access. And we've already talked last week about, the problems with Premier Access. Right. And the thing with a movie is that the reason people, it's that it becomes important for people, the reason people want to go out and buy it is that when it's first release, you do have that moment of you can only view this product in a theater. If you're also getting it at home, it's not as special. So again, we're in another situation where another movie that could have potentially have been big under previous circumstances didn't quite hit. Having said that, with James Gunn being who he is, I and also the fact that HBO Max is having a spin-off television show called Peacemaker, because there's a character in the movie called Peacemaker played by WWE wrestler John Cena, but he's going to have his own that character is going to have his own show on HBO Max. So more than likely what I suspect is going to happen is that not every movie that comes out is necessarily a huge hit at the box office. Sometimes there are movies that people catch up with, in terms of finding it later on home video, or in this case a streaming service, and then really liking it. And I think there will come a time to where this movie will get a proper sequel. It's too good not to, but for now, unfortunately, not many people have gone to see the movie. But it leads into a bigger discussion that I wanted to talk about in regards to a Guardian article that came out that I had you read in regards to comic book creators and how they get screwed. Because we can talk about James Gunn being screwed over by the movie being put on HBO Max as well as being in theaters, and how that cannibalizes any particular money. But imagine being a comic book creator. You create one of these characters that go on to billion-dollar movies, and your company gives you a $5,000 check and a handshake, and maybe you get a ticket to that movie. How would you feel?
I think that would chap my ass pretty hard, Tim. No question there. That's a lot of creative energy that goes into creating these characters. Because reading through, there were some pretty big names that, for me being not super in the Marvel universe right now, you think of Thanos, and most people know who the hell you're talking about. Well, somebody created that character. Somebody created some of the storyline with that character. And it turns out they're not getting a lot of credit for it. And when they are, they're seeming to have to fight for it.
Yes, and that's the shame here, because especially with someone like Thanos or whatever, it's like later era stuff. But these companies, there's an article in the Guardian. These companies essentially have it in their contracts that they can control what money the artist gets or not. Like one conversation in the article was from Jerry Conway, who was a co-creator of characters like the Punisher, and Ms. Marvel, who Carol Danvers, who went on to become Captain Marvel. And he talked about a character that he was given credit for by DC as creating for the longest time, until DC used that character in one of the CW shows, and then decided that that character that they had previously said was an original character of his was too derivative of Supergirl. It's I mean, this is not anything new in comic book history. On our website, I posted a paper that I had to write for my college class about Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and the creators of Superman famously signed over the rights to that character for $130. Which for all of the money that Superman has made over the years, just a drop in the bucket. And it's the problem here is this: it's like these companies don't get that the biggest cheerleaders that they can get for these movies are the people that actually created these characters. Because in the case of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster in the 70s, when they finally got the credit for creating Superman, the movie was the first time they were publicly credited as creating that comic. DC gave them both $30,000 a year, which drop in the bucket even at that time compared to what that character has made for Warner Brothers and DC, but they were happy with that, and because of the notoriety, they were able to get additional work too. And, having $30,000 a year was good for them. So it's another instance of just absolute corporate greed, when if you have an incentive-based system, people coming in, when you sign up to work with DC, you do realize that, ultimately they're going to own most everything, so if you're going in, you do understand that. And, it's like with any business, but it's like, it just gets under my craw, I guess, that once again we have these wonderful stories made by people who are putting in literal blood, sweat, and tears in terms of creating them, and they're not able to reap the benefits. I mean, I've seen many Twitter notifications about like comic book creators that need GoFundMes for like medical treatment, like the guy who created Rocket Raccoon, who was in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. One such person, and like both of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies both made over $1 billion. So you can't tell me that Disney couldn't easily fund his medical bills without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's odd that these people are having to come up and fight for additional payouts, which is something that Jim Starlin, they had quoted that very instance with Thanos, where he was able to negotiate a bigger payout after arguing about like the whole underpayment thing. So there does seem to be some way to do it. You just have to really fight for it. Whereas I think what a lot of people would prefer to see in our creative world is the more willingness, rather than, people having to approach lawyers to then go and then get more money. It kind of also goes for some of the stuff we talked about before with some of the Disney releases. Where they're having to go and have these conversations after the fact to get things made up for, because certain things don't look to pay the same when you have them renting them at home versus going to the box office. But yeah, it's a payment issue. It's just interesting that they're having to fight to even get credit. Is the article that you had sent talked about, Roy Thomas only being able to get his name on the Disney Plus Loki credits, like after his agent, quote, made a fuss, end quote, about it. You know what I mean? But you would think it would just be inherently obvious that the person who created the character and the storyline and some of the background, like, should at least be mentioned, as long as that's not out of some form of copyright. Like, obviously, whoever first thought of the character, those people are starting to not be around anymore, but people who are contributing to a current version of something should totally be referenced if that existence of that character. So like in that same universe that human helped create, if that is the character they are using, that person should be credited. They do the same thing with fan art and, you know, fan spinoffs. They don't take credit for that character. They tend to at least reference who created the character of the universe they're trying to spin off of.
Yes, it's like in Hollywood. It is common for a production company to pay a writer to, you know, to write this script. The writer created that script, and, you know, if it's made into a movie or TV show, it's going to say written by this person, but they don't own it. You know, created by credit is different than actually owning it. And again, we are here where, you know, artists get that, and I think artists don't have a problem. They understand that, you know, in order to make it big, you do gotta give and take, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. But, you know, when you have one side that controls absolutely everything, and also too just these that treats these people that are creating these IPs that are making them billions of dollars, and like there was one article about Ed Brubaker and Kurt Busiek, the guys who created the Winter Soldier character, not getting a ticket to see Captain America the Winter Soldier and having to text message the guy who played Bucky Barnes in the movie The Winter Soldier in order to get them into the movie. That is fucking shameful right there. Because again, you know, it's like, again, people get it, you know, if for a system like that, if you are signing away some rights, but these people would be your biggest cheerleaders if these companies just treated them as the IP creation whales that they are. You know, because if one character is going to be in a movie that will get you $1 billion, why not throw the person who created that character a little extra money to create some more characters? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of valid arguments. It's just, you know, we don't have to fight for raises anymore. Like whenever we work in our normal, like day-to-day job, like our non-creative job, it just seems like there could be something, possibly even entertaining some creative contracting, where if something takes off based off of this character, there could be something in the plans rather than making them have to essentially lawyer up and fight for it. That's the thing that I think really feels icky about it. Yeah. Is you want these big, almost corporate level creators like Disney and etc. Just because we talk about Disney a lot, so I don't mind throwing them under the bus. They know it too because of pulling back them trying to sue that school story. But you know, they kind of know how they are. But yeah, it's sad because they make all this great content and we want to be good supporters of it, but it just leaves such a bad taste in your mouth when you find out that writers, actors, and other supporting people have to basically fight when something does well to get that extra payout, because Disney would pocket the rest of it. The main production company would pocket the rest of it versus paying it out. And I guess there is some argument that they would then get to invest that into the next big movie. But there's a point where you get big enough, like Disney, where you have enough money. You have plenty of fucking money to foot your next movie. You should definitely be one of these companies that is paying your people more based upon the success and not making them fight for it. So I get why this would bother a lot of people. It bugs me because I want to feel good supporting places, but I also want to support places that treat their workers good. And that's got to extend to the creative outlets as well for me.
And it bugs me too, because I don't like, I mean, like when I read a Spider-Man comic, you know, in the back of my head, it does, you know, I am reminded that, you know, like even Stan Lee was, you know, screwed out of being able to get money for his characters. Now in his position, he didn't fight it because he was, you know, top of the food chain at Marvel for as long as he was. But, you know, when you have, these wonderful people that have made these great stories, these great characters, these great pictures that, you know, are going to be with us for years and years and years, you know, to hear continued stories about them being, taken advantage of by these companies definitely hurts. But having said that, I don't think the solution here is to not read comics. You know, like if you read less Marvel or DC, okay, but comics is a medium. It's, you know, the medium is not just superheroes, and there are not just two companies. There are plenty of other comic book companies out there, and the best way to support a comic book creator, whether it's artist or writer, or inker or letter or whatever, you know, is if you find a name you like, do a Google search. More than likely, they probably have some independent content out there that they get a lot more money on. And if you see them at a con like Rose City Comic Con coming to Portland here next month, if they are there, buy some of their merchandise. They will have pins, they will have trinkets, T-shirts, whatever. Just support your favorite artists. There are plenty of ways to do that that don't involve giving Disney or Warner Brothers money.
Exactly. I'm a big fan of, kids learning how to read. It's an awfully good thing to put in front of them because it at least meets a little bit of the colors of the cartooniness. But there's enough of them out there that are simple, like, G.I. Joe, if you're still into that, is still a comic that gets made. And it's really, I've been to a few comic shops. I really do kind of love the ones that I've been to. And I would say it's been enough of a happening that it wouldn't just be coincidence, but there does seem to be like kind of a good rating system. It'll be in plastic if it's got content that's not meant for kids at all. But it's amazing how much crossover there is there. So if you want to support them, there's a lot of ways, especially if you look into their independent stuff and find like new characters to kind of introduce to the next generation.
Indeed. Now, you want to talk Pokemon?
Oh, yes, I do, because I think we all know the Reverend Tracy likes to get Zero Pokemon on. So I like to catch them all, or I try to. I actually not as active as a player as many out there. But all you have to do is play the game at all, and you probably noticed something very dramatic happen within this last week or so, is Pokemon actually pulled back their extended distances that you could be from gyms and Pokestops. It was something they put into place actually really quick when, the pandemic was taking off. So just over a year ago, to help just, encourage people to still go and do raids. It gave people something to do because it was outside. And as long as you could stay far away from each other, there was nothing wrong with continuing to play Pokemon. They also did things like increase, they actually created, I think, the remote raid pass during that. I'm willing to be wrong about that because there's a lot of little features that I missed for a while because I did take a giant break from playing. But that seemed to be part of it too. At the very least, there was no cap on them. So with this update, they stripped all that back, which is only crazy because the Delta variant is now becoming prevalent. So really, we're kind of at the same point we were last year when these went into effect. Right. That has upset an awful lot of people. Some for the right reasons, some for stupid reasons. There are people who are out there that are concerned about the Delta variant and want to kind of be doing the same thing as they were doing last year on a civic duty level / personal care level. There are others who are just whining because a Pokestop that they used to be able to hit from their couch, now they have to walk down the street for. I could give two fucks about those players. Like I've never had what they call a couch Pokestop or a couch stop. And I just I don't know, go for a walk around your neighborhood. If you got one that close, just go outside. It's okay. The sun won't get you that quickly. So a lot of people were upset for varying reasons and are now kind of calling for a little bit of a protest on it. It's something that I am sort of taking part in, at least a little bit. A lot of people, there's streaks and stuff with playing every day, etc. So a lot of people are being encouraged to basically do the bare minimum. I personally am a little, how I like to wear my tinfoil hat and try to figure out what would a corporate interest be in this. And I think what my little brain landed on is I had decided that I think this is about foot traffic in featured Pokestop stores. So in addition to playing the minimum amount, I am also no longer going to be doing business at any place that's marked as a featured Pokestop. I absolutely think it's ridiculous that they're pulling this right now. And then what actually came out a week ago was that Pokemon, it seems that it is in order to entice players back in, they're now trying to do things like release a bunch of legendaries from a special version of Pokemon, the original game, I guess Sword and Shield was one of them. Yeah. Trying to bait people out that way and have special events. And I don't know if it's working or not. I think it's an interesting thing to do. Personally, I'm just kind of surprised that they didn't just go back and put the extended distance back out there. But yeah, I guess time will tell why. Some people are even saying that there were stops that they used to be able to hit from certain places, and it seems to actually be shorter than it was than in the before times too. So there's still things kind of playing out about this. I have noticed like a lot of like trying to get event things going for me, but I don't know. I've got a pretty strong stance, I think, on this, and that is that I think it's absolute bullshit that they're doing things to seemingly try to force people outside when I just don't think we're there yet. I know COVID is really boring, guys. It's been going on for a long time, but it's unfortunately not going to be done because we're bored, and it's not going to be done because businesses that have some agreement with Pokemon, want people to come and foot traffic in their stores. Like it's just not done yet. And I don't think baiting people with legendary Pokemon is going to be enough, but I'm going to keep my eye on it and see what else happens with it.
Yeah, because this is America after all, and there's a lot of people that will probably publicly be like, I support this. I'm not going to support Pokemon anymore until they change. And then on, off Twitter, of course, they're like, oh shit, I got to get the legendary, got to get the legendary.
Yep.
It's with... I'm with you. I think companies should be going out of their way to continue to encourage social distancing. I mean, look at the mess that is happening down in Texas and Florida right now. I mean, there was literally an event that Greg Abbott in Texas went to where he was fiddling while if you're using an actual fiddle, but bringing up the whole fiddling while Texas burned type of thing going on. And yeah, companies, it's like we can't let this happen again. We can't let the variants become too powerful. It's like, I'm not a medical expert, but it just seems to make why fight the medical experts on this? Just to make sure some rich billionaires or whatever are able to get just a little more money out of us. We think about everything that we have seen on the news about how selfish, utterly selfish and pathetic people can be, and just the company has to do better. So hopefully people, the users of the product will actually band together and actually follow through and not in making a large enough dent to force this company to bring back those changes.
Right. And I mean, really, what stinks is to really make a company hear you is you have to make them pay in a financial way. It's stupid, but it really does seem to be the only way when they don't agree with you already, right? Like they didn't, people didn't protest and say, hey, please put the distance extensions back in place. And then Pokemon, oh, you got a great point because Delta, and then put it back in place. They've clearly taken a stance of no, at least for now. And then you start to worry about, the heel digging reaction. If they did want to change their mind, if they feel like they can't, that would suck. But yeah, so to me, it just, my experience is companies that decided no and to disagree with you aren't going to care unless they feel it financially. Mm-hmm. And that's where my logic brain took me of, other ideas that people are doing is free play, where you don't put any money in, you only play off of gold coins that you get from gyms. Yeah, that's playing still, right? So is catching legendaries. And I'll tell you right now, I kind of don't give a shit about catching legendaries unless for some reason you have to be in a group in order to attract them, in which case I would then have a problem with that. Right. But my whole thing with the game is, you could still play it, but maybe try to figure out ways that you can actually get Pokemon to pay attention, which unfortunately with companies means hitting them in the wallet. That's why I'm saying I won't be interacting with any featured Pokestops. Well, actually, I don't mind interacting with them. I will not be spending money in the stores, though. Actually, yeah, go out and spin those featured stops just constantly and just don't spend money, because I'm sure they track that for some reason of, oh, here's how many spins, but we didn't get new customers that day. But, I think you have to be creative to make companies pay attention, I guess is what I'm saying.
Now, does that company, it's been a long time since I played Pokemon Go, so I don't know, but I have to assume there's also an element to it similar to like Clash of Clans, to where if you watch this 30-second commercial, we'll give you like X amount of coins.
No, unfortunately, they actually don't do anything like that.
Well, that's good, actually.
The way that I've avoided spending money on there is I do Google rewards. Mm-hmm. So part of my not giving them money is I won't be doing that anymore either. I plan on giving them no real world money as it was anyway, but now I'm not even going to give them those credits because I know that's money that Google then pays to them.
Yeah.
I am going to free play myself and just put my Pokemon on some gyms and get gold that way, which I don't need because fortunately I just made it rain on my character because of rewards points. But it so sucked because it happened like the day before this came out. And then I just bought a shit ton of gold and I was like, fucker. But anyway, so just going forward, I'm not. But that was, I guess, kind of my ways of thinking about showing that I don't like this. I'm still going to play the game, right? Like it's something to do. It really stinks from being so proud of them as a company last year for being one of the first ones to be like, hey, people need something to do. Let's make, this concept come to them where they can fight and do things from their couch, whereas this game was not intended for that. And now it's like they just made a few more ways to interact with the game and have now like kind of taken that spirit back out of it where they seem to actually give a shit about people. So I guess they're going to be maybe the end of my soapbox on it so I don't get too redundant, but I'm disappointed, super, super disappointed in Niantic and Pokemon together.
Well, speaking of disappointed, word has come out that Sony has narrowed down their list of contenders for the new host of Jeopardy.
Ooh, who's it down to now? I've seen a lot of, so-and-so host this time. Because is that what they did? Was they kind of tested it out? Because I think they've done that with a few shows.
Yeah. Since with Alex Trebek, his last round of shows that he filmed ended in December of last year. So since then, it has been guest hosts auditioning for the role. One of the most popular ones, at least among the Twitter sphere, was LeVar Burton. Famous for Roots, for Star Trek The Next Generation, for Reading Rainbow, of course. Sentimental favorite for everybody. I mean, myself, everybody would want to see him up there. But word is coming out that executive producer of Jeopardy, Mike Richards, is in contention to get that job. And you're like, huh?
Who is that person even? Like, I thought they would want to go with somebody who's known. Didn't they also have the real life astrophysicist lady she plays on
Mayim Bialik?
Big Bang. Yeah, thank you. Big Bang. Mayim Bialik. Wasn't she also one of the ones in the running, I thought?
She was.
Yeah, so that does feel weird to try to give it to somebody who's like not okay. Go ahead.
The impression essentially when this article came out that people got was that you had the producers of Jeopardy put out this public casting call for new potential host, and of course we got a cat.
Cat butt right across the screen. It's a shame we don't do the video anymore.
Yeah, that was Sherman. But the impression that it gave was that they auditioned all these people only to say, well, I guess the only person that can take the job is me, which is not the case, though. I have read up, and it looks like the official person making the decision is head of Sony Entertainment. So it's not, thankfully, it is not a situation of, this person doing it. It's in a lot of ways, it's kind of like when Conan O'Brien got the late night job in the early 90s, because there were a bunch of big names at the time that auditioned for that role. And then Lorne Michaels just said, hey, this writer who used to work on Saturday Night Live for me and works on The Simpsons now, and who I can get for really, really cheap, let's get him.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. I wonder if this was like a person, he had dreams one day of being a star and tried his damnedest, but only ever got into the administrative portion. And he just knew one day I will work my way up and I will insist on hosting a show. And then it doesn't work because, come on, Sony's not going to pick a nobody. They want to pick somebody who you're going to tune into. It seems far more likely to be, I always feel like I'm going to fuck up her name anytime I try to say it.
Mayim Bialik.
Thank you. Mayim Bialik? Mayim. Thank you. Mayim Bialik, or, the person from Reading Rainbow, because that also tickles a nostalgia bone, So I'm not worried about it, but it does seem kind of slapstick that he tried to be like, well, I guess I could do it.
But again, remember though, it was an audition process, and I guess he was one of the guys that they let do it. So I did want to clarify that it wasn't a situation to where the guy that they're potentially giving the job to is part of the search. He was not. But the couple of reactions that I've seen are definitely something we can talk about here. Like, one, some people were concerned that when you have a name as big as LeVar Burton interested in it, a black man too, on top of that, why didn't you go to him? Is there something racist going on here? And you were going to say something.
Oh, I'm just also saying, couldn't you say the same about a scientist woman who also would like the job, want to talk about the female being overqualified and getting passed for the dude applicant?
Yeah.
You're saying there's that factor too. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't read anything. I just wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a little bit of question there, because I don't want to assume the person is a white dude, but I kind of get a weird feeling that the person is a white dude, right?
Oh, he is.
Oh, okay. So see, like that's where it's like passing for anything like that right now, especially. No, I don't think that would fly. That's where it's like, I don't think Sony is going to pick him.
Well, that's another thing too, because after word came out that he is the front runner for the job, people started digging a little bit on his history. Now, about 10 years ago, he was a producer on The Price is Right. And one of the female co-hosts on that show ended up suing The Price is Right people because she claims that, among other things, that this person, Mike Richards, who is in contention for the Jeopardy job, when he found out that she was pregnant with twins, after she gave birth, she was working a lot less and then ultimately was fired from the show. And that he potentially may have made some negative comments about her being pregnant as well.
Oh my, a tale as old as time.
Yeah. And it's because the thing to keep in mind with game shows is, like, on the one hand, like, I guess I can see it kind of sucking, when someone says, hey, I'm going to be out, for hospital leave, medical leave for X amount of time. I think you, with your haunt experience, will kind of get the feeling of, damn it, I wish I had access to that person. But you get it, medical stuff happens, but it's just with an allegation like this, especially if the guy gets the job over LeVar Burton, it's just like LeVar Burton with his reputation at this point, it's just like he should have gotten it. But I think more than anything, what Sony was looking at more than anything was probably age, because LeVar Burton, 64 years old. Mike Richards, he's 1 year older than me. He's 45, and, at best with LeVar Burton, if you hired him, you'd get maybe 20 years, but that's pushing it, with Mike Richards, theoretically being younger, you could probably get a lot more out of him. And also that being that Mike Richards is not a big name compared to LeVar Burton, you could probably pay him a lot less. Now, touching back on the racist aspect, do I think Sony has made an edict that we will not hire a black man? Of course not. But institutionalized racism being what it is, a lot of times people are making these decisions because, how is that going to play in middle America? Or is Nebraska going to like a black man as host of Jeopardy? These are questions that are asked in Hollywood boardrooms. It's that type of institutionalized racism that I think should be touched upon, because, like, to me, it's like, why couldn't they have done something like hire them both and say, LeVar, you get Monday through Thursday, Mike, you get Fridays. And but laugh, but Johnny Carson did that for years. The News, when Tom Brokaw was, nearing the end of his time, Brian Williams, when he was, going to replace him as an anchor, would essentially do the same thing. Tom would work for 3 or 4 days out of the week. Brian would work the rest. And if Tom was sick, guess who's taking over? That type of deal. So why not build that relationship where essentially you use LeVar Burton to kind of rub some of his good juju on this Mike Richards guy? with as sentimental a favorite as LeVar Burton is going to be. Now, at the end of the day, I wasn't a big Jeopardy watcher anyway. So even though I really would love to see LeVar Burton get that role because I think he would be perfect for it, admittedly, it's not like I would be watching every single day either. But it's just disappointing, and it kind of shows Hollywood is, for all the good it can do, it's still very hard for change to happen in Hollywood because it is also a conservative town in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, and then, what I still find interesting is we mentioned Mayim, but why is she not even being considered as another role? Like, I can understand you had a fair point about, not wanting to go with somebody who's too old. Because that even stacks just more likely to something to happen so that you are abruptly no longer part of the show. That is a risk with hiring somebody who's older. But yeah, like I would honestly love to see almost what you were talking about, where if they're going to share it. But why would it need to go to Mike to be shared? If Mayim still wants her name in the running, why don't we use this as an opportunity to still get viewership, probably a little bit of nostalgia tug, and then at the same time we can test out if we can actually have a very intelligent female person take over one of these shows, because I don't think that's happened yet. I don't think any of the classic shows have been taken over by a female. That's what had caught my attention when she was even auditioning for it.
There have not been many. I know, like The Weakest Link, the British version and the early American version did have a woman as the host. I know Jane Lynch and Ellen DeGeneres have. So it's relatively recently, within the past 20 years, that women.
But not a big takeover as something as classic as like Jeopardy or The Price is Right, like stuff that you've watched. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe
the marquee names.
Time for that. Exactly. The big marquee names. Like, we could totally use this to test out that concept. Sony would have, our Reading Rainbow. What was his name one more time?
LeVar Burton or Mike Richards?
LeVar Burton. We would have LeVar Burton, and that's going to bring in a totally other demographic that might not have even been watching Jeopardy, just because they're going to go for nostalgia grab. And then you can also bring in possibly more demographic by having Mayim in there every now and then. And maybe they can test that out, because there's that question too, is, are we going to get so many viewers turned off because, hey, maybe a lot of the demographic of Jeopardy are the more conservative people. And that could very much be why those questions are still being asked in the boardroom, not even specific to Hollywood still having some of these old ideals, but them being very aware of who watches these shows would have to play into that too. So it could be a weird secondary effect of them not wanting to lose that traditional viewership they had for a specific show.
And as a business, that is something you do want to look for. So that's not something that, me as someone who does not work in the entertainment industry should dismiss out of hand. That is a very legitimate thing to consider. Having said that, there have also been, that argument has also been done for like superhero movies that are led by women and or led by minorities. They've made that argument in the past that women can't lead a superhero movie. Captain Marvel kind of showed them different. Wonder Woman showed them different. Black people can't be the main character in a superhero movie. Black Panther, come on. It's the audience. History has shown that, when you do take a chance on something like this, if it is good and Jeopardy is good, you have a better chance of opening the doors to getting more people to test out your product than you did before. Because there have been people on Twitter that I have read. Now, again, not a scientific study, I don't know these people personally, but there have been people that identify as African American that I've read on Twitter that said that they were really excited about LeVar Burton being a part of that show, and that it could be a big thing that could be an open door to the African American community. And one thing too about, you mentioned Mayim Bialik, another person that auditioned for the role, Katie Couric.
Katie Couric? God, I didn't know because again, I don't follow this up to a T. I think Mayim came up because I am kind of a little bit of a fan of her, not super fangirl following her around, but I think she has the chops to handle, hosting a show, because that is different than doing something scripted. but I've seen her unscripted. She actually showed up randomly on MasterChef Junior and came on for something there. So she does have like a little bit of that, background to do that. That is funny about Katie Couric, but that again how old is Katie Couric?
She would probably be comparable in age to LeVar Burton, I would have to think, because yeah. I mean, maybe she's in her 50s, not that old, because like she first hit big in the early 90s, or the 90s primarily. And so that would be in my 20s. I'd have to assume she was in her 30s at that. So yeah, I would say she's probably in her 50s or 60s, which, again, she's a bigger name than mine. Like, why wasn't she ever in any real serious contention as well? It's just like, it would be interesting, I guess, to find out what they were really looking for. Maybe the consideration they want is that they don't want a name that's going to have other connotation, other baggage that they bring with it as well. Maybe they want somebody that, like when they cast for Superman, for instance, they didn't want Robert Redford to be Superman because people would say that's Robert Redford. They wanted somebody unknown to say that's Superman. So in this case, maybe they're looking for that unknown name so they can just say that's just the host of Jeopardy, not, hey, Geordie LaForge is hosting Jeopardy, or Blossom is hosting Jeopardy.
I mean, I can kind of see that, but Jeopardy kind of seems like one of those shows that, because we knew the host for so long, like, you'd almost want a host you feel like already to take it over. But there's basically, who fucking knows what they're thinking. I also find it incredibly interesting that no women came to the top of the bill. And if that possibly has anything to do with Jeopardy maybe having a more conservative viewership.
Yeah. Speaking of conservatives, we still have a conservative person as the head of the United States Postal Service.
Oh, yeah. So there is an update a little bit to some of the USPS shenanigans, controversy, whatever the fuck you want to call it this year. Because if we go back into the Wayback Machine of last year, August of 2020, there was a lot of talk about DeJoy pulling back on a plethora of cost-saving measures as Postmaster General. Because if you didn't know who that was, you do now. That's the Postmaster General. They make a lot of big decisions over the government entity that is United States Postal Service. One of those things that caught a lot of flack and attention was the removal of mail sorting machines. Now, back in the Wayback Machine, this was people being concerned about mail-in voting, which was under a lot of attack at the time as we were spinning up to the election that we knew the orange toddler wasn't going to win. But anyway, they scattered it about and they took a lot of machines from around 49 states. And, the thing that really got people's attention about this, just to kind of refresh people that don't remember, because I went to refresh myself today, is while sorting machines are regularly decommissioned in a given year, the alarm was caused by how many more were taken out than usual. To give the perspective here, in 2018, it was 125 machines. In 2019, it was 186. And in 2020, it was 671 machines they took. And then the other part of that was there was a lot of question of, well, wait, is this like actually pulling and repairing and replacing, which was something that a lot of people wanted to imply was going on. But it was actually Pelosi who spoke out saying, DeJoy, quote, frankly admitted that he had no intention of replacing the sorting machines, blue mailboxes, and other key mail infrastructure that had been removed. And now we come to current, and it appears there, I will admit that this is a little bit of my tinfoil hat, but there does appear to be that DeJoy maybe had more long-term goals going on. So I was reading a Forbes article that came out, and I will definitely be sharing this, where it's talking about essentially what happened is they've decided to give a $120 million contract to a company called XPO Logistics. And the thing that's important to know about XPO Logistics is that DeJoy used to work there, and he does still have ties with that company. That basically means their success equals money in his pocket. It's a little bit removed. It sounds like he might own some of the buildings or something. Like, he's not getting direct payouts, which is still kind of what feels a little bit shady to me. So what's interesting is they're putting all of this stuff up and still, I guess, there's like mail slowdowns and things going on, which also kind of helps make the argument of why we quote unquote need to move this to something private. So it does seem really sketchy when you realize just last year how many of the sorting machines have been taken, and now they're trying to reflect these numbers as if it is something that is just a systemic problem with the United States Postal Service, when it really kind of seems like they're having things taken and not replaced. And it looks like possibly it is with the long-term goal of replacing it by outsourcing to another private entity, which we know that is the good old Team Red's favorite thing to do, and a lot of actual legitimate Republicans too. They have their arguments on some of this. This is one I don't agree with, though. There was a lot of reason that we decided we needed the United States Postal Service. Otherwise, they wouldn't have created it. I remember one thing, just to put it out there, that's, worth keeping an eye on this and vote for these officials. This is an elected position. So keep an eye, on who's going to be in there. It would be super nice if we can make some shifts and somehow get rid of DeJoy, or, keep an eye on what's able to be voted on locally. I just wanted to put it out there that I think it would be actually a really bad thing and kind of a disservice if we wound up losing the United States Postal Service. And I think outsourcing the sorting is kind of a red flag for that.
Yeah, I mean, and for anybody that may think, all government bureaucracy is bad and that, privatization is a good thing, I want you to go to a drugstore, buy a postcard for your grandmother. When you buy that postcard, write her a nice message, put it in the envelope, then go to UPS and try to mail that to her. Get the price on that, because you're looking at maybe $15. Now walk to your post office and try to mail that. Under $1, you're going to be able to mail that to her. If the post office goes away, or if the work that the post office does is severely drawn back to give to private interest, no longer are we going to have the ability to cheaply mail things across the country or across the world. And think about all of the Etsy businesses, all of the eBay businesses that are going to be tanked, because he's already raised the price of stamps. I think they're close to like 50 cents now or something like that.
Oh, they might be more than that, because I know the whole forever stamp, it's been going up over time, which does make sense that it would go up some. I know, I actually just went and looked it up. Send a postcard is a whopping 36 cents. Yeah. 0.36. First class flat mail, which is your standard envelope, is $1. So it sounds like it might be up to $1, but that's just a quick little Google search over here on the side, because I knew postcards were crazy cheap to send through USPS.
So yeah, just not through not through UPS or FedEx or anything like that. And one thing too that people may not realize is that Congress essentially shot the USPS in the foot, because and I wish I had done the research on this, but it was they put it to where the USPS could not run a deficit or something like that. And because of that once Congress did that, it essentially started the downhill spiral that we are in today with the service, because they're a government entity. They shouldn't, for them to work properly, they shouldn't have to worry about a profit. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be oversight to make sure that there's not waste. That is a smart thing to do, but just think about how many things would be just stopped or severely hurt. Like one thing I heard that you can do in the mail is like mail chickens. If you're a farmer and you can mail things like chickens through the mail, but that price goes from like cost effective to spending $500 or $1,000 or however much money UPS or FedEx would charge for that. There are plenty of things that the post office does that most people don't know about, that if we could continue to cut funding for them or to make it private, is just going to go away and hurt this country in so many ways.
Yeah, and by the way, if you guys don't know some of the awesome things you can do through the post office that will probably disappear immediately if they disappear, you can send flat rate boxes. Granted, it sucks when there is a planned quote unquote strategic slowdown, which is actually something that a few of the Biden appointed governors like actively criticized DeJoy about during this meeting that happened this last week, was this 10-year strategic plan for the agency and its measures that would allow for slowdown of some first-class mail delivery. So it's really easy to convince a country that you guys need to maybe consider outsourcing parts of it when you do things like get rid of sorting machines and then plan for slowdowns. Especially like, why are you planning for slowdowns if part of your argument to this whole thing was that people aren't mailing things out as much? Well, I don't know. I think we are. Like, there's some things that have gone down, but it also seemed to be in correlation, like some issues that seem to have come maybe from places not having the sorting machines. So I don't fully understand how any of this came to be in the first place. There is a lot of attention to it right now. It's a story I plan on following some more. I know I felt the pain of some of the slowness of these slowdowns. And what stinks is they don't like come out to be very clear that there are planned slowdowns. They don't seem to increase like the ETA, the package getting somewhere. But yeah, so ways you could support, I don't know, ship stuff. They've got flat rate boxes. I think it's like really about $22 wherever you are. And it can be as heavy as you want it, by the way. And they've got like different sizes and stuff. Another thing you can do if you're moving and you would like to do something at a less expensive rate, that's how the Mr. Reverend and I got our books across the country, because it was the same media format. You could do something called media mail. And that is insanely cheap. That is stuff we couldn't find anywhere else that actually helped us move. So yeah, it's little things like that you can do to help support the post office. I mean, have fun. Send some postcards to people. Like, come on, it's kind of a weird time again anyway. So maybe we can go back to doing that again. You can even like color some of them and send stuff. I don't know. I'm a little bit nerdy like that. And I guess I'm nerding out about the post office a little bit right now, which is kind of the point.
More than anything, as we've learned with a lot of stuff in this country, keep the politicians' feet to the fire. This is not something that should be privatized in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be management and to make sure that it's properly run, to make sure that there's no unnecessary waste. But if the post office were to go private or even just a portion private, we're going to be losing out on a lot. Yeah. I
mean, really, the biggest thing we would lose if the United States Postal Service really did disappear. And part of what came up last year when they started talking about some of these things is the Postal Service is the only one that can kind of verify mail at the level that you would need for, say, submitting a mail-in ballot. So if your big tinfoil hat is how are they trying to do my voter suppression, then this topic might appeal to you to follow as well. I think it's one of those small ones that gets kind of like forgotten, that the post office actually does help people vote too.
Yes, very much so. So definitely keep an eye on that, because if we just think it'll be okay, it's not going to be okay. We got some bad people that are looking to do some very, very bad things to this country for their own personal gain, and the next few years are going to be interesting, to put it mildly.
I love that his whole thing is like, I don't have any like DeJoy, sayings like, well, we chose this person through the normal bidding process and I had no say. And another concept I just kind of wanted to bat off of you is like, I don't know, people, maybe if somebody in the government can benefit financially from a company being in the bidding for one of these things, that could maybe exclude that company from being in the bidding for some of these things, because whether or not he has say in it or not, it's still going to leave a bad taste in people's mouth that a politician or a publicly appointed person is going to make money off of a service that's being taken away from a demographic who is of lower income that uses it more often. So yeah, I think it's a little bit stinky, and I'm going to follow this stinky cheese and see how bad it smells later.
Yes, someone has to. Now, before we wrap things up, I think you wanted to talk about cortisol management.
We all know, friends of me and friends of me through Friends Talking Nerdy here, As I am a huge nerd for kind of working with my own little brain in a sense on cortisol management. And that is a lot of how I manage my anxiety, my CPTSD, and depressive type symptoms. And I wanted to throw out there that I'm starting a new supplement, so I might mention it from time to time. I am a huge nerd when I get into this stuff, and I like reading things like double-blind studies where they tested it properly against a placebo effect. So what was really cool to read about this supplement called ashwagandha, which if you've heard of it, I think it's actually kind of going through what I call the Dr. Oz effect right now, which is somebody said it's cool and somebody said it's good for you, so we're going to throw it in everything. We just saw this happen with turmeric, and most famously was the acai berry thing, which legitimately was Dr. Oz and Oprah. So that's where that term came from for me. But it's been a little bit in everything, and I'd heard about it before, so it did make me curious. I was able to find that double-blind study where they tested it against a placebo. And what they essentially did was they took a bunch of people, and for, I think, about 10 days, I forget the number of days, but they did test both of them similarly. You know, some were given a cornstarch pill, so they didn't know, because that's the point of a placebo. And some were given ashwagandha. They actually listed the regimen was like 400 and something milligrams twice a day. And what they found was, while both sections, like some parts of their ability to fall asleep faster improved, you know, because really with sleep, unfortunately, if you change anything about it, sometimes it can cause changes. But the test group that actually did the ashwagandha, like they had a significantly higher like quality of sleep improvement, as well as time to fall asleep. So this got me incredibly interested in taking this, because sleep disturbance is still something that I have a big issue with. I know a lot of people really seem to struggle with it in general. So if you're looking for something to help you with sleep, you might want to look into that. And something that I found incredibly cool about it was an article I found through the Cleveland Clinic from just May of this year, where it stated that research has shown that ashwagandha can help normalize cortisol levels, thus reducing the stress response. In addition, ashwagandha has also been associated with reduced inflammation, reduced cancer risk, improved memory, improved immune function, and anti-aging properties. So if any of you guys are interested in using something like that, I'm going to test it out. Feel free to talk to me in the group if you want to, if you decide to test it out too. And yeah, let's see how that works. And then also just to tease out there that I am going to be attending an online seminar that talks about the effects of the plant-based diet on mental health. So I might be nerding out about mental health next week as well. So if you look forward to things like that, you'll have that to look forward to.
Nice. Speaking of looking forward to stuff, we have 3 big anniversaries coming up for the show. First of all, within a couple of weeks' time here, we are closing in quickly on episode 200.
Just in time for my birthday.
Yes. Imagine that. Imagine.
Total chance. I didn't even remember it was my birthday next week until like just now. So I'll slow that down a little bit on that excitement. Like Google's been trying to remind me it's my birthday for a week. And I'm like, don't pretend like I do anything on my birthday, Google. Go away, Google Assistant.
Yeah. I mean, the older you get, it's like, please stop. And me, it's like, anyway, but yeah, that's one anniversary. The second one is coming up on August 23rd. That is Friends Talking Nerdy's 4-year anniversary.
Woohoo!
Last but not least, next month will be the 1-year full-time anniversary of a certain member of the clergy.
It is?
Yes. Yeah, you started September of last year. So
that's right. I guested the once, and then we decided to try to make this work during the craziness that is a pandemic. And so far it's worked through a pandemic as well as me moving across the country. So see, I forget my birthday. I also forget other anniversaries. So if I've ever forgotten about you as a friend, just please understand, I apparently don't care about myself either.
Well, we are I'm definitely excited about those anniversaries coming up, and we're definitely going to find ways to celebrate them on the show here, as well as, you know, doing all the other usual wacky stuff that we do. So with that, every Wednesday and Saturday in this podcast space, we will have something entertaining for your ear hole. Thank you all for listening. We bid you adieu.
Goodbye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.